guys, let's talk a little bit about commodification, right? This is a question I talk a lot about on this channel. We should decommodify things. We should try and do, remove the capitalist element out of these things that we do, these goods and services that we provide to one another. Let's find a better way to do this. And I generally think that an undeniably better way to do these things would be through socialism, i.e., switching to a predominantly worker co-op model of production instead of a private business model. Because hey, we have worker co-ops right now; they work great. A lot of the evidence and like studies that we have on them indicate that they are superior in most respects to private businesses. So let's embrace worker co-ops. But the flip side of that is talking about decommodification. I think that there should not be a price barrier to like people being alive, right? So I think where this gets tricky, right, is in not necessarily decommodifying art, but taking the element in art that necessitates it be, I guess, I that necessitates it being a commodity. Let's make it into something else, you know? Um so it's how do I put this? This is why we're seeing sequel-itis in Hollywood. This is why we're seeing known popular properties being adapted into these sprawling, $100+ million films. Like, I don't know what's Justice League at now? Like fucking $1 billion. Uh, like, um, so yeah, I mean, like there are all kinds of things that we should decommodify. Um, I'm not saying we need to decommodify art, but we need to remove the commodity element of it because I think not even necessarily because like commodity bad and non-commodity good, but because I think commodifying art makes it less good, to some extent. And I know that that's kind of like a subjective opinion, right? What is good art, after all? Everyone has a different opinion on that. Um, what's the difference between decommodifying and removing the commodity element? Well, that I'm not sure. Like when I say decommodify water or electricity, I mean like they should be free for everybody. You shouldn't have a cost barrier between you um, and that service or good. But when I'm talking about art, removing the commodity element of it, I'm not even entirely sure what I mean by that. I could mean the same thing, I guess. Maybe we're talking about like there being some kind of grant that you get that gives you like a budget as an artist, and you don't have to sell anything; you just have to create. But I well, so like I don't have this take fully fleshed out either, Elysian. So I'm kind of working it out loud as I talk about it. But this has been a problem for a long time. Like we have these movies that are increasingly derivative. We're now on like our third remake of like fucking movies from like the 1950s. Like we're on the I don't know, the fourth iteration. How many Captain Americas have there been at this point? Like, I don't know. Instead of relying on all these known quantities, we could instead be inventing new stuff, better stuff. Instead of just iterating, we could do more and different and strange and cool and interesting. And some of those might be failures, but that should be okay too, right? Um, and I bring this up because I found this quote by Ursula Le Guin while I was perusing Twitter, as you do. And I'll throw it up on screen so we can all look at it together and enjoy the thoughts of one of the greatest fantasy writers of all time. Um, all right. You let people enjoy things. Ursula Le Guin. All right. Commodified fantasy takes no risks. It invents nothing but imitates and trivializes. It proceeds by depriving the old stories of their intellectual and ethical complexity, turning their action to violence, their actors to dolls, and their truth-telling to sentimental platitude. Heroes brandish their swords, lasers, wands as mechanically as combine harvesters, reaping profits. Profoundly disturbing moral choices are sanitized, made cute, made safe. The passionately conceived ideas of the great storytellers are copied, stereotyped, reduced to toys, molded in bright-colored plastic, advertised, sold, broken, junked, replaceable, interchangeable. What the commodifiers of fantasy count on and exploit is the insuperable imagination of the reader, child or adult, which gives these dead things life, of a sort, for a while. So, this is I think a very fair critique and something that is as true when it was initially said as it is now. And I think that we need, to an extent, we need somehow to figure out a way to kind of escape this commodity trap that we've put on art. I'm not going to pretend that I have the answers to that. I know that there are some floating around that I haven't looked into too closely. How do we overcome the need to convert something that is purely motivated by creativity to something that necessarily has to consider how it will succeed in the market, as that success is tied to the livelihood of the artist? Well, Elysian, I think that this is where, like, the other aspects of decommodification are really useful. If there is no financial barrier to, like, living, well, then you can create art. You might not have, like, the best apartment, you might not have the best house, you might not have, 5-star meals or anything, but you can create your art and still be able to live and, like, live a decent life. If we passed all of the other decommodifying principles of, like, decommodifying food, shelter, water, electricity, etc., etc., etc. So, like, commodity and art have always been historically tied, and I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with art being commodified. But what I do think is kind of I guess what is wrong behind it for me is when art is commodified by capitalistic greed and need, right? Because, like, the entire reason things are, like, fantasy is commodified now and, like, just, like, broken and, like, put together in slightly different ways, a lot of, like, the new Star Wars movies, for example, didn't take huge risks. A lot of the Marvel movies these days don't take huge risks. A lot of that is because, they're these $100 million behemoths that have so much money behind them, so much need to make a huge profit for their investors, that, they do the safest option. And the safest option doesn't lead you to the best art. It just leads you to a safe option that, might be good at getting you a return on your money, but it's not good for creating, like, good art. But I think that if we had a system whereby, people can just live, and they can live doing whatever the fuck they want, whether that's nothing or writing, like, a novel series that, maybe isn't very good, but is unique and strange and different, I think that this would be a good thing, So you're saying we need to get rid of Marvel fans? No, 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 no. This is why I think that this is why a UBD is so important, as instead of acting as a social safety net, it acts rather to lift the ground itself. True. And, like, the fundamental issue for me is that I think that it is, in order to, I guess, for lack of, like, a better phrase, in order to free art, from these constraints, we need to be able to accommodate a bunch of these different things. We need to be able to, um, we need to be able to decommodify the things that people need to live. We need to be able to break this capitalism that is currently strangling our nation. We need to be able to move over to socialism, a socialism where, you know, artists have control over their art, and whether that artist is like, a novelist, or like a sculptor, or a movie director, or like a cinematographer, or whatever. I think that they should have more say in their work environment, you know? And I think that that would all of this would directly relate to increasing the quality of art, the quality of storytelling. You know, would you consider luxury goods art, like Louis Vuitton, Hermes, etc.? Man, a machine. That's a good question. I don't necessarily think I would, but again, also there is like an extent to which you can consider almost anything art, right? So like you can consider like a chair that you sit on a work of art. It depends on like the context, the narrative around it, the story. Like that's part of why it was really subversive, that famous artistic piece that is like literally just like a toilet, like an installation toilet piece. That's why that's so subversive. It shows that like you can make anything art. And so, yeah, when we're talking about fashion, yeah, it gets really complicated, I suppose, when we're talking about this topic and how commodifying goods in general could lead to this type of thing. Like carpentry can absolutely be an art. Um, Leather working can certainly be an art. All of these things are arts. There's a reason that they called highly skilled craftsmen artisans, you know? So, yeah. The issue I foresee is that if we give artists too much freedom, they will all end up just drawing naked pics. I mean, Autumn Leaves, you say that as if that's not what all artists have done all the time. Like, I don't know, humans have been horny forever. They put naked people on like everything, you know? I love woodworking. Yeah, and wouldn't it be cool if like you could live in a world where like you you could just do woodworking and like hone your craft and get good at it, and just like, make a few pieces a year, and sell them for some excess income as like as part of like a woodworking workers co-op, like a community co-op for woodworkers. That'd be super cool. I'd be really down with that, you know? Like, I can just go be a blacksmith. Absolutely done randomly. I would, frankly, if I had the opportunity to just go and be, like, apprentice myself to become a blacksmith, I would absolutely do it. Sounds super fun. We need more lewds. No comment. But I think that this is where, this idea of, I guess, commodification to an extent, like the toxic elements of commodification, I don't think come in from like merely being sold in a marketplace environment. I think the toxic elements come in when the selling of it is linked to your ability to live, and when like the selling of it is, I guess, destructively pushed on others, like in order to pursue accumulation of wealth. Michelangelo didn't have to give God a thick booty, but he did. So can I ask, in your mind, how would how would shares / the share market work in socialism? Do you mean like the stock market? If we're on this topic of essentially all creative work entailing artistry. I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that we need a stock market. I'm open to the idea of just like we don't have a stock market anymore. or alternatively, like we could set up a system of socialism whereby, like, yeah, I mean, you can still participate in the stock market, but like, I think it would have to be via like kind of what like Mondragon does with their their two-tiered stock system. So basically, having employees have tier one stock, that's inherently more valuable and gives them more say in the company than anyone who has tier two stock, and tier two would be like the public stock. Um, so it's one of those things where I I I'm not an economist, so I can't give you like a detailed version of like what a kind of what a stock market that primarily caters to worker co-ops would look like. All I know is that it would look very different, but I'm also not sure if that would have like a positive impact on like society if we also had if we still had people who were able to like, I don't know, play the stock market. Like I guess I need to know if like there is an inherent value to these people who like, they buy low and they sell high. Is there an inherent value to having these people in our society? I'm not sure. I don't know enough about economics to know if that actually adds any kind of value. Um let's see. I have a lot of woodworking tools. Always wanted to get an anvil and make knives and other stuff too. Oh, that'd be super cool, Radical Maniac. Also, yeah, I'm working on making a workshop now. Pretty much, I just like making stuff. Lol. And wouldn't it be cool if like you could make a community workshop where like everyone's working together and you like, I don't know. I think that would be really cool and neat. Having like that bustling workshop environment. Because in socialism, shares would be your way into the company. So if we had corporate law that essentially made stock/shares like library cards, this would solve this problem and would also disallow people who have nothing to do with the creation of companies, artists from buying voting power over those creations. Yes, I was gonna have you on to talk about stocks at some point. I got super depressed last week, and that plan kind of fell through. Sorry about that. Um, One person, one share. Yeah, I'm not entirely sold on turning like the stock market into like an equivalent for like library cards. And maybe I'm just too stupid to understand that idea. That's totally possible. I'm open to that. Um, Company shares. Well, yeah, I mean, but like company shares are traded on the stock market. Oh, I gotcha. Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Interesting. I have to think it over. Like I didn't come into this conversation with any solid ideas. I just wanted to talk it out, talk about commodified fantasy, commodified art, and kind of see where that took us. We've gone in some interesting directions. You wouldn't be able to trade stocks anymore. That would be interesting. It'd be super interesting. I also think I mean I kind of think that the idea of like abolishing the stock market is kind of like, when we talk about that, like I think that's something that's probably outside of our lifetimes. Like I don't necessarily know that that's possible today, but as like a long-term goal, I'm down to kick that idea around. Um just got here. How's everyone doing? We're doing good, relevant millennial. To me, the idea that you can trade shares in a company is not a good idea. It's like being able to trade votes or library cards. Gotcha. How's everyone doing? Yeah, yeah, I just don't think that you could really sell. Oh, it's not. Nothing's impossible, right? Like nothing's impossible. It's totally possible that we could have like a revolution within the year that like transitions us to communism, right? But like, I don't necessarily think it's super probable. And like the entire goal of my channel is to advocate for policies that I think are possible are like within the realm of probabilities. Like I want to advocate for market socialism, not because it is the idea that closest aligns with my political ideology, but I advocate for it because it's the first step towards what I think is a better world. And it could be the first step towards a system that, does more closely align with my ideology. But I think that the journey to get there is going to be longer than my lifetime. But this is market socialism? Absolutely. It requires international left-wing organization? Absolutely. But that's what we need, right? True. But this is market socialism? True. COVID resolution will end with the bad guys winning in America, sadly. Yeah, I mean, Elysian, part of the issue is that, like, you're 100% right that we need international organization, but I don't think that there's any way. I've only been running this channel for a little bit, so I could be wrong. I don't think that Americans in general give like two shits about people in other countries. Like you can get lefties to care about people in other countries, but like conservatives, liberals, neoliberals, yeah, I think that like the main struggle here is first adopting like socialism as like an accepted thing, I guess, like pushing for internal changes here that then have outward changes for the rest of the world, hopefully. um true. Americans do not think non-Americans are human. Lefties are probably like less than 5% of the people in the US. I'm not sure. I think honestly, here's my the reason I push for market socialism. It's because I think that we can get there, or at least some form of market socialism. And I think you can get there by like being like presenting simple, relatively straightforward ideas to Americans that they can get behind. Like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if your grandmother could get some health care? Wouldn't it be great if like your dad didn't have to die from prostate cancer? Wouldn't it be great if like, you remember how we got rid of polio? What if we could get rid of more of that by, just treating people with preventative care? I think that these are arguments that we can make that have tangible impacts on people's lives. And I'm hoping that when we start passing these policies, it helps reconnect these people with their communities. And by reconnecting people with their communities, we can then push forward with larger goals, whether that's, decommodifying housing to a degree, whether it's food, water, electricity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I think that our main inroad, our main point of attack needs to be on healthcare, and then from there we can move on to the other struggles that beset America, and hopefully by solving these problems one by one, we can, solidify leftist support, we can make leftist arguments, and then we can, hopefully by doing that, gather enough power and enough worker solidarity to be able to get, at the very least, a significant portion of America to care about people in other countries too. Good night, autumn leaves. But this is what Giannis was talking about in that speech the other day. We say it's inconceivable, but FDR's policies were just as pie in the sky. History shows us that we actually make progress on large scales if we have well thought out plan and we fight for it. Absolutely. Which is why I have a well thought out plan that I fight for, Is depression a commodity? No, sadly. But that's the other thing too, right? Like, I don't think it's inconceivable. I don't think any of the things that we talk about in politics are inconceivable, right? CMMC 101501. Thank you so much for the subscription, friend. Finally figured out Twitch Prime. Hell yeah. And like the issue is that we can do it. And like that's the entire point of my Twitch channel, yeah, is like telling you that like we can fucking do it, and I'm super excited about it. Because I firmly believe that we can do all these things. It's just a matter of like getting the political will to do them. Um, and right now I focus on the first step, but I'm open to a second, third, fourth, fifth step afterwards. Um, and Nick Vodog absolutely right. We must be doing more organizing stuffs. This is partly why I'm building a community. Head over to Discord, and we can all chat together about organizing and doing cool shit. What in specific do you think is the first step? Well, I think the first step, in at least in the United States, is organizing for Medicare for all. I think we need Medicare for all. And after Medicare for all, we need to push for how like shelter, like housing first solutions in the United States. We need to then push for um, like decommodifying housing, or sorry, decommodifying like water and electricity so that people can like live, as well as food. Then I would push for internet because you basically need internet in order to function in society these days. Um, and I think that like the fundamental issue here is that we need to be advocating and pushing for policies that actually benefit these people, because essentially people in America have gotten to the point where they don't expect the government to do shit for them, and that lack of expectation is basically what hamstrings us, like there in France, they fucking like shut down like the entire country to go riot over like pension cuts, right? In the United States, we don't do that. Like in the United States, we're like dying over here. There are like 30 million people who are in danger of losing their homes. And like the government sends them a $600 check when they're expected to pay like half a year's back rent on January 1st. So like people in the United States don't expect the government to do anything because it's worked so little for so long. And I think that once government shows that it can actually do shit for them, then we're going to be in a really interesting political time that opens up a lot of interesting possibilities. How would you like to see this done? Through something like public works programs, like a Marshall Plan on your own country? Yeah, Elysian, I'm a big fan of the Green New Deal. I think that we should be putting manufacturing back into the United States by... Guys, thank you so goddamn much for this hype train! Just real quick, thank you so much! Relevant Millennial, thank you very much for that 1 month tier 1 sub that you gifted to Elysian. And Archangel DeCobb, thank you so much for the 5 gifted tier 1 community subs. It's incredibly generous of you, friend. Thank you. Oh, Archangel, thank you for the tier 1, another tier 1 gift sub. Goodness gracious. Y'all are great. Rompy Kitty, I'm not really sure what you're talking about, but okay. Um, so like yeah, so basically my essentially my pitch is that we should embrace the Green New Deal, because that would put a lot... we have record numbers of unemployed citizens in the United States. We've been talking about wanting to bring manufacturing back to the United States. So let's put all these people to work manufacturing the infrastructure we need to avert climate death, Like, Relevant Millennial, thank you so much for the cheering 400 bits. Carrot Cake, thank you very much for the 300 bits. Serious Twitch, thank you for the 500 bits. I am being hyped on. I'm really appreciating this, guys. Thank you so goddamn much. I never come into this chat expecting you guys to give me anything, and you guys are just being so lovely today. Thank you. Thank you so much. Glyphnoid, thank you for the 42 bits. Goodness. Y'all are fantastic, okay? Thank you. For 42 is a fantastic number. One of my favorite numbers. It's also the inverse of how many people are watching right now. Um, oh gosh, meaning of life stuff. True. So there's this large group of unemployed people in the country. We have the pressing need to address climate change. When we're talking about, even if you were addressing this from a capitalist perspective, I see no downside to this. Putting people to work to address a huge problem that is going to cost us trillions of dollars if we do nothing. I think that this is something that we need to do. And I think that by doing this, guys, we can implement it in a way. For example, I would implement it in a way such as the workers who are working to do these things, they'd be organized into worker co-ops. Those worker co-ops could then be the baseline of us showing kind of the rest of the country how to make how to make a wider change, right? Because these people, they're going to be working in worker co-ops. It's going to be millions and millions and millions of people. And I think that if these are done and organized correctly, that can make a huge difference on the culture of America. And I'm hoping, Raycall, thank you very much for the 100 bits. Ugh. How would worker co-ops be set up? I would like them to be set up as democratic worker co-ops. I know that there are some worker co-ops that aren't set up in a democratic manner. When I'm talking about worker co-ops, I'm not talking about worker co-ops that are not democratic, worker co-ops here can be democratic or they can GTFO, okay? How could we build worker co-ops? Relevant Millennial, thank you for another 100 bits. We have if we get just a few more bits, we can get another few minutes of hype train. We can get some more hype train. Can I bounce a model off your brain? Well, yeah, I mean, I've talked a little bit about worker co-ops on my stream before. I actually was setting one up at the beginning of the year, right? And I've brought this up on stream a couple of times, so I'll just bring it up again. Like, this is essentially how I was going to set up my own worker co-op, right? You'd have this was, for example, a like media worker co-op. Hell yeah, we made it to level 4 hype train, baby. Thank you so much, Serious Twitch, for the 163 bits. It's freaking amazing. Thank you so goddamn much. Keep the hype train going! Guys, I've actually seen a hype train finish. It goes all the way up to level 5. Fun fact. Yeah, essentially every single employee would be a member of the worker co-op, and then periodically, like every business quarter or so, they would go to a meeting and vote on like the priorities and pursuits of the company for the next quarter. And those would then become the mandates for the leadership board to pursue and implement changes if necessary. And likewise, Grizzly Baron, thank you very much for the 101 bits. Thank you so much. Once this like, you can also, I would also be open to organizing flat model worker co-ops, but I think that those tend only to work in very small ways. Like if you have like 5 to 10 members, maybe max. But I don't know a whole lot about flat co-op models. So I could be wrong about that. There might be, I'm open to the idea that we don't know enough about, oh yeah, it can be completely flat. Absolutely. I'm open to the idea that you could have completely flat co-op models, and I just don't know how to make that work. In my experience in researching co-ops, they tend to work when they're best when they're smallest. Yeah. Oh goodness. So yeah, it's totally possible for worker co-ops to be flat. I also have no inherent objection over like I have no inherent objection of like there being hierarchy of any kind. I know that there are some people who really bristle at hierarchy, and I think that's totally understandable. But my approach to worker co-ops is essentially boils down to like I like democracy in my government. I also like democracy in my workplace, you know? So let's have every single employee who's actually contributing to the company be a part of the membership. Possibly, you know, if you're having like a readership thing, the readers can also be involved in the membership in some capacity. Um, and then you all collectively make the decisions. You all vote on the important mandates of the company. If any employee has a specific concern that they want to bring up, they can bring it up at the membership meetings. If an employee just wants to clock in, clock out, not go to the membership meetings, that's totally fine. But they always have the option of going. And the leadership board is like legally bound to follow the dictates of the membership. Um, so I think that this would be a way of doing it in a way that is relatively relatively consistent with how Americans in particular recognize companies today. Archangel DeCobb, thank you for the 200 bits. You guys are so nice. Gosh. How do you join a company? Does everyone own a share? Is voting mandatory? So yeah, like voting, much like in America, would not be mandatory in a worker co-op. I think it's totally fine if you don't show up. But you know, you're giving up a say in your work environment, you know? Let's see. And how do you join a company? I mean, it would be the same as today. Like you would have to be hired, you know? Um, let's see. Does everyone own a share? And this model I think works in both a a system in which like company shares exist with or without a stock market. I think that's fine. Oh damn, we got a hype train success. How did we do that? Hell yeah. Hype train emote. Choo choo, motherfuckers. Oh, it's so cool. I love. Wait, the hype rogue? What even is that symbol? I have no idea. Oh gosh, thank you so much, everybody. Happy birthday. Thank you. It's not even my birthday. My birthday is coming up in about 3 months. I'm excited about that. Goodness. For example, if I worked in one section of a company and wanted to hire someone, would I just put an internal application to the rest of the company that people could vote on, and then if everyone agrees, we put out an ad for the position and conduct interviews that anyone could attend? I mean, I think that is very flat. That's one way you could do it. I also think that you could do it with the traditional like structure that we have now, right? Like, you know, the leadership board and membership would like be like, hey, we need to expand and grow the company by X amount. And membership would vote on that, yes or no. If they vote no, then nobody else is hired. If they vote yes, then you hire some more people. And like HR or whatever team is in charge of that could then conduct those interviews and hire someone, you know? Is this a worker co-op model? It is indeed, Philosopher in Exile. Good eye. So yeah, I mean, like, it could definitely work in a flat process as well. In fact, like working in the game industry for a long time, like one of the ones I'm familiar with is the developer of Dead Cells. They're a flat worker co-op, I believe. At least last I checked. So I know it works. It's just like it's much easier to communicate very clearly responsibilities and like what people are doing when you have like 5 people as opposed to like, I don't know, like 500. A hierarchy system like this makes it a bit easier to grow and for everyone to know kind of what they have to do. Um, you claim to support worker co-ops, yet you haven't set your channel/brand in the co-op mode. Curious. Wait, is there a co-op mode? I wait, I'm too new to Twitch. Is there a co-op mode? I don't know that, you know? Is that an original or is this an already made model? Oh, no, I made this. Um I made this at the beginning of 2020 when I was trying to work out the details of getting a media worker co-op off the ground. And of course, then COVID hit and ruined all of my plans for the year. And so, the co-op itself never materialized. But I still have a lot of like my plans, a lot of my like my business plan. I have the structure down, all that stuff. Birthday for the new me is 31st of March. Hell yeah, Ashley. Mine's April 10th. That's my birthday. I pronounce it there you go. That's why I keep saying it weirdly. Mine's in August. Wordplay. So yeah, I mean this has been an interesting like dive down the rabbit hole of like commodification of art and really where does art kind of go? New me as in transitioned me. True. Where's the bunghole diagram? Oh, the bunghole diagram. We don't need that. We aren't going over the basics of socialism, friend. We'll get to that eventually when new people show up. Okay. We we don't have to. I don't have to draw a butthole every time someone comes in to ask about worker co-ops. I just sometimes the butthole diagram comes up when I need to describe the difference between a private company and a worker co-op. Goodness. I hate that you all saw that in my diagram. It for the record, it wasn't me drawing a butthole. It was me drawing a diagram of how worker co-ops are different from private businesses. Hell yeah, philosopher in exile. Cis allies are always appreciated. I'll keep my eyes peeled for it. Thanks. You're so sweet. Whole guys, I've been talking for almost an hour and a half. How is this possible? I feel we've only covered 2 topics, and I felt like I was very surface level on both of them. Wow. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Well, you must be enjoying it because we had a hype train. I do have energy. I do have that. I just need you to know that it's entirely artificial because I drank an energy drink earlier today. You can tell when I've had my energy drink because I actually am awake. Um, How is revenue divided then? Like in the model Giannis discusses, and that is the most convincing I've ever seen. It's basically split into 5 portions: government, basic costs, R&D, wages, and bonuses. So there's no tax, but the government owns a small share, maybe 5 to 10% of every company, that is used to fund the universal basic dividend. So I don't necessarily think I totally agree, by the way, that like Giannis's model is completely doable and workable. My issue is like getting to a place where we would I do not know if we can. I think it would be, sorry, I'm babbling. Basically, in the model that I described, revenue would be largely divided still by like wage, um, but people would have the ability to vote on what their wages are. People would have the ability to vote on like what their working conditions are. So like instead of taking, for example, like, oh, we are guaranteed X amount in payment, right? You could instead vote for like the upcoming quarter to instead use profits from the company to reduce the amount of time you work, right? So instead of having a 5-day week, you have a 4-day week. You'd have that kind of freedom for the company to kind of like use profit in a way to benefit the workers, right? And the workers would have direct control over that. Um, and when it comes to like the government owning a piece of every company, like I 100% I think Giannis's model would work. Um, my primary issue is I think that currently our taxation system, we it would take time to overhaul our system, and I think that that's I'm not inherently against taxation as like I don't think I think that it's fine to tax companies. That I guess that's my position. It's fine to tax worker co-ops, um, because part of what I think makes worker co-ops really good is transparency, especially democratic worker co-ops. I don't think that like a worker co-op is going to democratically vote to like hide their money in the Cayman Islands, right? I don't think that a worker co-op is going to vote to move its factory to a different country. I don't think that a worker co-op is going to do these things to like be scummy and shitty, like dump their waste in the like their toxic waste in the local water supply because it will increase their profits by like 5%. I don't think that I don't think that a worker co-op would do this if it was under democratic control. Um, so that being said, I like let's see, but wouldn't it be a better way everyone decides on what portion of the revenue goes to wages, and that is split evenly among everyone, but there are bonuses that are another portion of the revenue also voted upon, and the bonuses in this model would be decided in a Eurovision style voting system where you have points to allocate to others, but you can't vote for yourself, so bonuses are decided by your colleagues' perception of the merit their colleagues add to the Commoni. Um, I like again. I think that it would work. My issue is that my primary concern isn't what would work best necessarily, but what we could feasibly do in like the near term. Like I can spend all day thinking of like a perfect economic model, right? But if I'm not able to actually implement it, then I don't think that it has that as much value as a practical one that could be passed, right? And so like I'm perfectly fine having like Giannis's model as like a long-term goal. But when I'm talking about like my implementation of what these policies would be, um, I think that it's far more doable, largely because we already have worker co-ops in the United States. You know, like we have them. The issue is we need to figure out a way to have more of them. We need to figure out a way to you know, create more of them and transition that to be our primary thing. And I don't think that we can necessarily make a sweeping change like, for example, the government owning 5% of every worker co-op until we have a majority worker co-op country, right? Like that would be the first thing that we would need. So like I'm fine with Giannis's model like as like a way of maybe improving upon a socialist system that we might adopt in the future, if that makes sense. But I don't think it works as something that we can have like now as like a first step towards making the world like making America better. Um, well, no, I don't think that the government owning 5% is radical. My issue is fundamentally that like the right now, if the government owned 5% of all existing worker co-ops, it would still only be like I don't know how many what percentage of worker like what is worker co-ops in the US. Let's see, how many are there? Yeah, currently there are nearly 400 worker co-ops in the United States, which how let's see, how many businesses in the US? There are 32.5 million businesses. Um so when like I don't think that it's a big deal. I have no issue with like the government owning 5% of a worker co-op, right? Uh the fundamental issue is that we don't have enough worker co-ops to actually have it mean anything if the government actually owned 5% of a worker co-op. And it could, in fact, like hurt the ability to create new worker co-ops. And that's, I think that we need to be able to have predominantly worker co-ops exist before we can be like, hey, in exchange for not taxing you anything, we're just going to own 5% of your company. I think that that's much more doable when you have predominantly worker co-ops, and we just aren't there yet as a country. It's actually possible without them being co-ops. The owners of companies would just dilute their shares. I don't think the government owning 5% of every private business would be a model that would work very well in capitalism, right? I think it is a model that works great for socialism. I don't think it works great for capitalism. Um, Real question: what is to be done about casinos? I have no fucking idea. For I need to be clear, guys. I am not a super genius. I am a humble woman on the internet who is doing her best, right? Um, I I try my best to like logic things out. I have a decent education behind me that allows me to think critically. But like I am not an economist. I am not a I'm not an expert on casinos by any means. Um, but yeah, there you go. I have no idea what we would do about casinos. I don't have any inherent objection to casinos, I guess. Um, maybe there would be a limit on how much on like what percentage of their wealth people could spend on a casino though, so as to like limit like I don't know. Or maybe in a future where like your excess wealth doesn't actually like prevent like you not having any wealth doesn't prevent you from like being able to live. Maybe it'd be okay to gamble at a casino, you know? You'd still have a place to live, you'd still have food, water, electricity, etc. Um let's see. If the government came out with a law that said every company has to give 5% of its revenue to fund what was automatically and equally divided among every citizen, not owned by the government, owned by society, as a return for the social capital that citizens provide to the company. In return, they no longer have to pay taxes. This would be a good deal for everyone in the immediate/short term. I don't know. I that one I'm sold on. I'm sold on the concept if we achieved socialism, like if workers own the means of production. I'm not necessarily sold on it when it comes to corporations. Um, I mean, because part of it would be that like you, at least how shares currently work, you wouldn't get like I mean, maybe you'd make dividends? Are we talking like dividend shares? Or are we talking like shares you would have to liquidate? Okay, we're talking dividend shares. Gotcha. Um, I don't know. I feel like this is something that could backfire horribly. Um, and I guess I would need to see an example of it in action and know the data behind it before I would be comfortable like embracing it for like a nationwide policy, you know? Um yeah, I mean it would depend on how you set it up, absolutely. Yeah, I would need more data, I think. Fundamentally, I advocate for positions that I think are backed up by data. I haven't seen any data on like 5% ownership and what that would do, or like a smaller example that can like show me how it works in a controlled environment. I don't know. I am extremely hesitant to I don't know, change these things in a still capitalist society, because I think capitalism is incredibly adaptive in an almost evil way, right? Like, um, for example, I can see like a scenario where like companies like purposely funnel money out of the company into like private bank accounts and like report losses so as to scam the government out of money. Um, I don't know. It's something I would need to see more about. You know, don't we need to stabilize capitalism first to build market socialism? I think that that is a misnomer, largely because I don't think that capitalism is capable of being stabilized. Like the inherent drive of capitalism is to be unstable, to grow eternally. Um, and I don't know. I think that, well, but also like I'm not against like taking like sensible measures to like stabilize the economy. My main issue would be that like prioritizing stabilization could be like a project that we never feel like we actually complete. Um, and I don't know. It could be one of those. I'm familiar with what you're saying about Giannis's position is that we embrace like social democracy and put off like socialist revolution until after we stabilize the markets. And I agree to an extent. I don't think that we should let this hamstring our efforts. Like, it's the position of people in power to stabilize the markets. I'm not in that position of power, so I continue to advocate for socialist change. Um, oh yeah, absolutely. The Green New Deal would have a great stabilizing effect. That's part of why I advocate for it. But also, I think that you could use the Green New Deal to further a socialist agenda. Well, yes, yes. Uh, Fascism is what happens when capitalism collapses in on itself. Um, which is why I would like to build up a lefty coalition that is capable of resisting such a thing. Um, but I, again, I feel like this is kind of inherently contradictory, right? Like you're advocating for a radical overhaul of like the tax system, which would not stabilize the markets. Um, and I'm just saying that I would rather have that radical overhaul of the tax system after we achieve socialism. I don't think that buying the United States government effectively buying 5% of all businesses would be a stabilizing effect. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Um, but like Elysian, yeah, absolutely. The entire reason I made this channel is to advocate um right. The entire reason I made this channel is to advocate for decommodifying processes that allow people to not have to work or die, that end homelessness, end starvation in this country, and like, yeah, embrace the Green New Deal because we need to get our shit together because the world's gonna end in like 100 years if we don't. So like, yeah, this is why I made my channel. Yeah, we agree on all these things. I don't know why we're like having this seems like an argument. I'm not sure. In how many countries do you think your plan of ending homelessness would work out of 195? Well, probably all 195 of them. The primary reason for people being homeless is lacking homes. So if you give them homes, that ends their homelessness. Oh yeah, it's absolutely a tactical discussion. Um, all right. But how many countries can afford the money and have the land available to buy these homes that will cost a lot of money? Well, no one said anything about buying homes. Usually, when I advocate for housing first policies, it would be to build places for people to live. Probably the most economical solution would be like housing complexes. Um, that being said, again, it's cheaper to house homeless people than it is to not house homeless people. That's the fundament. Like, it's cheaper to house these people. It's cheaper to like give them a place to live for free than it is to let them live on the streets. Because on the streets they're far more desperate, and they're more prone to crime. Crime is usually born out of desperation, and if you're homeless, you're pretty damn desperate. So yeah, I mean, it benefits society and like lowers the costs to society to build homes for these people. So the better question is, how can all those countries afford homelessness right now? I think that's a better question.